Welcome everyone to Judicial, Senate Judicial this morning. Judy, would you do the roll call, please?
Senator Case,
Present.
Senator Cooper,
Here.
Senator Purfey,
Here.
Senator Schuler,
Excused.
and Chairman Landon.
Here.
Thank you, Judy. We've only got one bill to consider this morning. It's House Bill 94, Board of Parole, Wyoming Residency is the name of it. We have Representative Rodriguez Williams with us this morning. Come on up, representatives, and welcome to the Senate side. And tell us your thoughts, please.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman and members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's an honor to be before you this morning and present to you House Bill 94 titled Board of Parole, Wyoming Residency. This is a very simple bill that I bring before you this morning. I too, as you know, serve on Judiciary over on the other side. And one of the things that we see is reports from national organizations that take a look at our criminal justice system as a whole. And essentially this bill derived from such a recommendation. It simply amends Wyoming State Statute 713-401 and amends it to read on page 2, lines 4 through 8, that no person shall be appointed as a member of the board who has not been a resident of the state of Wyoming for at least 1 year immediately before the person's appointment and shall be a resident throughout the member's term. So essentially what this bill does is requires that those who are appointed to the Board of Parole be residents of the state of Wyoming. The House side did amend this bill, and there was an amendment that passed that made it 2 years. And so I didn't have a problem with that either. And I would stand for any questions regarding the bill.
Thank you, Representative. Questions for the good representative? Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. So, Representative, we of course vote approval on all these boards and commissions here in the legislature. But I don't remember what the makeup of the Board of Parole is. And so there's that question. What is the makeup now? And then the second question is what created the bill and what created the concern that had you bring the bill?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your question. So it's my understanding that the Board of Parole consists of 7 part-time members. And yes, you're correct. They are appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate to serve 6 terms with the option to reapply. I don't come before the committee with any specific incident that served as a genesis for this bill. It's basically just to provide put a little sideboards within statute to make sure that we are appointing Wyoming residents to deal with Wyoming problems, specifically within our state penitentiary.
For the questions for the representative. Welcome, Senator Schuler. Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Representative Rodriguez Williams, I'm kind of wondering, why wouldn't we want people that have experience elsewhere to look in on how we do things in Wyoming? And why would we want to limit the governor from his selection pool? Because these boards are hard positions to fill. And, you know, the governor can weigh in whether they're residents or not. He gets to kind of think about that. But I guess I'm most concerned about if we become so closed-minded here that we look at the way we do things without thinking how other people do things, That's not always healthy in my mind. I appreciate your thoughts. So why we need this?
Representative?
Vice Chairman Cooper and Senator Case, thank you for sharing your concerns. When you look at other states, as you mentioned, and some of the guidelines that they have for board of parole, they can get really extensive. There might be residency requirements, there might be educational degree requirements, there might be requirements that one might work in the field of criminal justice, et cetera. And so I think that our state statute is very minimal, very open-minded. I will tell you that on the House side in Judiciary, we did hear testimony from the Board of Parole, representatives from the Board of Parole, and also a professor from the university who testified as well as a private citizen. And so there was some support for this bill. There wasn't any resistance for it. It did pass through the House pretty easily, basically just to put some sideboards on it. And again, I think that Wyoming citizens should be appointed to these type of positions. So.
Senator Landon.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Vice Chairman. And to pick up on where Senator Case left off, I actually was thinking about this last night. And I thought, you know, one of these days I'm going to saddle up and maybe take off somewhere and see the country. And maybe if I land in another place, I might still want to offer to continue to help my home state. So that would preclude, though, me from letting the governor know that, hey, I'm going to be down south somewhere, but I'd be glad to come back every so often and serve on one of your boards. That did come into my mind. I guess, why would we not want people like that to be able to serve on one of our boards?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question. So I guess it would come down to whether or not an individual would give up their residency within the state of Wyoming. If you're a snowbird, which there's many in my community that leave for the winter and they come back, but their residency is here within the state of Wyoming, and they have a driver's license and they vote within the state of Wyoming. So I would think that would be suffice if in that situation. If one were to change their residency, say down to Florida, if this bill were to pass, yes, that would prevent a Florida resident from serving on the Board of Parole. And I personally think it's appropriate for Wyoming residents to serve on Wyoming boards.
Senator Schuler.
Green light on, so I didn't know if you had a follow-up or not. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. And I apologize if I asked a question that's already been asked. I had to present a bill in another area. So two questions, actually. The first one was why you decided to go with 2 years versus 1, because apparently that was amended in the House. And then my second question, when I read through the bills, similar to Senator Landon's, if I lived here for, let's say, 20 years, maybe I decided to be a snowbird, decided I didn't really like it, but I'd been here 20 years, but maybe I was only gone, for a year and then came back, or maybe even 2 years. I would still have quite a bit of knowledge of the state of Wyoming and what it's all about, and maybe, our values and that sort of thing. Would they still be exempt? And so those two questions, if you could answer those. Thank you.
Representative?
Mr. Vice Chairman, Senator Schuler, regarding the amendment that was placed on the bill to increase it to 2 years, that idea did not come from me. Again, it did pass in the House. And so it was just one of those things. I don't have a an answer for you on that specifically. If it were the pleasure of the committee to reduce it back to 1 year, that would be a friendly amendment to me. And regarding your question about having lived 20 years as a Wyoming resident and moving, much like any other situation, I think that people kind of need to personally decide whether or not they want to move on and serve in their new community, or come back and be a part of the state in which they were, where their heart lies, so to say. And so again, this is just my personal opinion, that I do believe that Wyoming residents should be the ones that serve on Wyoming boards. Thank you.
Any further question for the representative? Representative Rodriguez-Williams, thank you for being here, and if you'd kind of hang close in case somebody has further questions. Any other testimony in the room, please? Welcome this morning. If you'd introduce yourself for the folks in the room and the folks online, and let us know who you are.
Yes, sir. My name is Margaret White, and I'm the Executive Director of the Wyoming Board of Parole. And if you have any further questions about the composition of the Board of Parole, I'd be glad to respond. In the House, I did not offer any objection on the part of the board to a 1 year. I believe that the board would have some concern about 2 years, because that is further restricting, the governor's powers of selection. So I, on behalf of the Board of Parole, would recommend that at least it go back to 1 year. As far as whether there has been any Board of Parole member that is not a resident of the state of Wyoming, I have checked with members who have been on the board 15, 16 years, and they just have no recollection of there being someone who's a resident of out of state serving on the Board of Parole. So we're all kind of puzzled why this bill was introduced. Mr. Fetzko, the UW official who testified in the House, was talking about a gentleman that would fly from like California to Jackson because he had a townhouse or a condo there or something, and that the state plane, we used to use the state plane, we do not anymore, but that the state plane would, leave Cheyenne and go and pick up everybody around the state, including this man from Jackson. Nobody has any recollection of that, but, assuming that's true, I guess my argument is that if that gentleman had a condo or a townhouse in Jackson, that then he is likely a snowbird and a resident of the state of Wyoming. So really, there's just, I don't know, there's just puzzlement all around why this bill was introduced. But the Board of Parole, we go to every institution once a quarter and to the Wyoming Medium Correctional Institute every month. So someone from board staff and at least 3 members of the Board of Parole are somewhere in the state every other week. So it is not the type of board where someone could fly into Cheyenne and be at the quarterly meeting and then fly home. This is a very intensive board, and they do remarkable work on behalf of the citizens of the state of Wyoming. So it's just a difficult thing. They are volunteers. They get paid the legislative rate of pay for 3 days of prep for the hearing, and then 3 days for the hearings, and per diem. That's all they get. But they are just absolutely devoted. But anyway, Mr. Chairman, that is the position of the Board of Parole. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your service on that. It's a critical board, maybe one of the toughest in the states to serve on. So we do appreciate your service. Any questions?
Thank you, sir.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Just since you brought it up, I'm curious to know a little bit more about the makeup of the 7-member board. Where are they all from? And maybe could you tell us a little bit more about the history of, are some of them long-time serving members, or some of them fairly new, that sort of thing?
It's the spectrum. The chairman is this wonderful guy from Worland named R. Scott Galkey, and he was a telephone company executive in Worland for years and years. The vice chair is a woman from Cheyenne named Kathy Wright. She was a music teacher and also a brigadier general in the Army National Guard. The next longest serving member is Ed Wright, no relation to Kathy, but he's also a general. He was the adjutant general under Governor Freudenthal. The next longest serving member, and we're talking 14, 15 years for Ed Wright and Dave Gray. Dave Gray is from Green River, and he was the Sweetwater County Sheriff. Before that, he was a Wyoming Highway Patrolman for years and years. He was the Director of Governmental Affairs for Anadarko Minerals in Green River. The next member is Lori Garrison, whom I'm sure some of you know as Lori Millen. Lori was a state representative here in Cheyenne for, I don't know, at least 2 or 3 terms, and is now an investment advisor. And she just recently served as the chair for 2 years. The next member, and these are more recent. I think Ms. Garrison has been on the board since maybe 2019. And then there is Billy James, who is the longest serving city police chief. He was the police chief of Torrington for 34 years. And then the most recent that the governor appointed just last March is this wonderful guy from Casper named Scott Wanzer, who brings an incredible amount of experience to our mission because he was a parole agent and then the district manager of the Casper Probation and Parole Office. And with me today is Jeff Lamb, who is the deputy director, who served under Billy James for several years as a Torrington police lieutenant. That is the board. So it's a real variety, and Dave Gray and Ed Wright have been on the board, I think 15 or 16 years. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. That's a pretty impressive resume. Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. So, Director, I did not catch your last name, and I
Oh,
apologize.
White, I'm sorry.
W-R-I-G-H-T, is that?
Just like the color. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I forgot my name tag, so I'm wearing, yes, I'm
Well,
sorry.
thank you very much. It's,
Yes.
we're kind of a brand-new committee this session, and so we look forward to working with you as we go along. But thank you for the information on the board. Those terms, you can serve for 6.
Mhm.
Are those 4-year terms, did I hear?
I believe they're 6-year
They're
terms,
6-year terms.
and then you can be reappointed. Mhm.
Okay, thank you for bringing the information. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Further questions? Thank you, ma'am. We really appreciate your testimony here today. It's been very helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Anybody else in the room want to step forward and give us some testimony? Judy, do you have anybody online? Okay, well, absent any further discussion, I guess we'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure?
I'll move.
Moved by Senator Furphy. Discussion? Senator Landon?
Mr. Vice Chairman, thank you. I appreciate the representative being with us this morning, the opportunity to look at the bill. Thank you. I have to admit I'm struggling a little bit just to get up to all the reasoning behind the bill. it kind of feels like maybe we are not having any problems on this front. Regarding the boards, and the senators here are well aware of the fact that we deal with confirmations every year. And we do have boards in Wyoming where we have people from out of state to bring that kind of expertise in, and very, very valuable on some of our energy boards and some things like that. I'm not saying that we would ever have a governor even seek to appoint somebody from out of state, but on this board, it sounds like we never really have. So I guess that's my struggle, Mr. Vice Chairman. I'm just struggling to get there on this one. So.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Case, did you have just something you wanted to add to this?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I think we should move the amendment and then put the bill up. And the reason is I think the amendment makes the bill better. I'm not in favor of the bill, but 2 years is a worse restriction than 1 year. So I'd like to offer that amendment this time.
Okay, so the amendment's been moved. Judy, do you have a copy of the amendment? Okay. Any discussion on the amendment?
Question
So,
on amendment?
motion, or so question on the amendment. Is this a roll call vote?
No.
Nope. A voice vote? Okay, all those in favor of, what would this be, standing amendment number 1 to?
Just proposed amendment. Case's amendment.
Okay.
I'm offering it.
Okay, so this, all those in favor of Senator Case's amendment to House Bill 94, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Well, the amendment has passed.
Back on the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Back on the bill. We want to go through it real quick, page by page, or is everybody comfortable?
I think we get it. It's really one sentence. Mr. Chairman, I would speak against the bill. I think this board especially seems to attract folks that have a long-term commitment to law enforcement, to justice, and I'm impressed with that. I'm really impressed that someone that was in law enforcement for 34 years, probably locked up a lot of the characters that we've got in our system, but also wants to help and give on the redemption side of that, or provide their judgment about it. You know, and obviously you can't do that unless you're a resident. So I sort of see this, you want to have a resident, but I think there's no problem filling this board with these very motivated people. And I'm also not opposed to new blood coming into an organization, even with someone from outside. And they might help us to think about where we've been doing something the same way forever and maybe haven't really thought about it. And so I can't go with this bill today.
Thank you, Senator Case. Further discussion? Senator Landon?
Just another thought or two, Mr. Vice Chairman. I'm kind of where the good senator for Fremont County is. I've had an opportunity, by the way, Director White, to interact with the parole board. I had a situation up in my district where a family had a daughter who unfortunately stepped off the highway, and really unfortunate situation, and was struggling to and finally got an opportunity to go in front of that board, and was so impressed. Spoke on her behalf, and that board just does tremendous work in my experience. I'm not saying that the Senate would ever confirm somebody from out of state. I'm just not sure that we would. But if there was a compelling enough interest to do that, we might. And so that's what's on my mind. And I just don't think that this is an area that we need the sideboards at this time. We just I probably can't get there either, Mr. Vice Chairman. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Landon. Senator Schuler?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Yeah, when I first read over this bill, I was kind of the same way. I'm not sure that I was really understanding whether or not we had a problem. With the amendment, I feel a little more comfortable with it. But it sounds like the number of folks that we have on the board, and it sounds like a really, really good board. And again, I wasn't here for the testimony, so if it was mentioned about there were issues trying to get people to serve, I would probably not vote for this bill, but where I don't see that there's I like the idea that we have Wyoming people on a Wyoming board. That's so important to our folks that are trying to maybe get their lives back together and get back out into society. So I can vote for this bill, even though I'm not, a little lukewarm on it, but I think I can move it forward if that's the will of the committee. Only because I think the makeup of the board and the fact that at least while I was here, I didn't hear an issue with trying to get folks to serve on this board. So that would be my indication.
Thank you, Senator Schuler. I'm going to ask a question of the board here and show my lack of experience.
I love that when that happens.
Would someone like to address exactly how these appointees are approved and the process for that, if you would, for me, please? I think I understand it, but if somebody could cover that for me, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I'll take a first stab at it, and then I know that the veteran among us, the good Senator Case, can maybe jump in on this, but it really is an opportunity for every one of us. And legislators often nominate or certainly send in letters of support for people who are interested in these boards. All of those nominations come into the governor, and his staff works very, very hard to try to find those who are willing to serve on these commissions and boards. Very difficult. And the ones that are most difficult are when we have the division. It's necessary to have a minority party represented in a certain way. Sometimes that's hard to find someone of a particular political party, for example, to nominate. But those nominations all come into the governor. The governor sorts through those and then makes his recommendations for the boards and commissions, and then they come to the state Senate. And we review those line by line by line. We then even conduct interviews with these nominees, and then it's taken for a vote out on the Senate floor for confirmation. So that's kind of how it works.
And Mr. Chairman?
Senator Case?
Yeah, the entirety of the appointment process is in that section that's in the bill. I would look at it and say, I don't understand why this board has a political party split. It says no more than 3/4 can be from any particular party. We've tried to eliminate some of those political party splits when they didn't really matter. And this one, I'm not sure I see why it would matter. And what I'd like to impress, it's hard for the governor to find people to serve on boards. Some boards get a lot of application. This may be one, and I don't know it firsthand, but the governor will start hearing about it real soon, and he'll be, if you haven't heard from him already about a board that may need someone from your district, you will. And the more restrictions we put on boards with districts and party makeup, and then to go further and talk about occupation or education, it may be necessary in some situations, but I'm not sure I see it here in this board. And in fact, I'd probably support getting rid of the party split, try to make it more open. But I'm very impressed with this board and their staff. Thank you.
Right, Chairman.
Mr. Senator Landon?
Just another comment, Mr. Vice Chairman. Regardless of how the bill comes out of committee today, I look forward to ongoing conversation on these boards and commissions, and certainly our joint judiciary can initiate those discussions and keep this conversation going. I'm looking at the representative because it's important to keep this in front of people, and I know that it's important that people want their state represented on these boards and commissions. So I just want to throw that out. it's not like we're shutting the door on any conversation going forward or considerations that we might want to come up with.
Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I want to explain something here. I voted to go ahead and vote in favor of this bill because I wanted to hear the conversation, because I'm a little confused on this bill. But when I heard the executive director say, doesn't see the need for this bill, and after I've heard the conversation, I'll probably be a no vote, but I just wanted to explain what I was doing here. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Landon. I think it's pretty apparent the importance of these bills, and probably the idea that maybe we do overlook the critical makeup of these boards. So I think we've maybe done a real good job of really vetting the process and understanding what it is we're trying to do here. So further comments, anybody?
Call for the question.
Question on the bill. Judy, would you give us a roll call, please?
Senator Case,
No.
Senator Furphy,
No.
Senator Landon,
No.
Senator Schuler. And Vice Chairman Cooper.
No.
Mr. Vice Chairman, there were 4 noes and 1 aye on the amended House Bill 94.
Thank you, Judy. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that concludes our business
Thank
today.
you, Representative.
Thank you, Representative. Executive Director, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate your testimony, and I think we've all learned quite a bit here this morning.
So wasn't Clouda a board member?
Okay.
Richard Clouda, wasn't he a board member? Clouda. Okay. He was a law enforcement retiree from Landon. But I thought he was on parole, but I can't remember. That was a while back.